Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. On today's episode, Moshe and I are speaking with founder, instructor, and design leader Kevin Hawkins. We'll be discussing some of the user testing platforms on the market and ones Kevin has used. So let's hop in. How you doing, Kevin?
Great. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Hey, Moshe.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Kevin. Welcome to the show. I believe you're in Spain these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm near Barcelona.
Nice.
Oh,
Very
wonderful.
nice.
Yeah, the Spanish Grand Prix is going on today for F1 racing, so I was watching that earlier.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I have no idea what is that, but
there you go.
I'll go with that.
I'll fill you in later. I'll fill you in later.
So thank you for joining us on the show, Kevin. You have a very impressive background and knowledge of user testing platforms. So you actually are going to talk with us about 4 products, which is unprecedented in our short-lived podcast.
Yes.
We had some people that came for 2 and 3, actually, when someone came for 3 episodes, talking about 3 products, but you will do 4 products. So we will probably split it up to 2 episodes to give you some breath and some to our audience as well.
Yep.
So first of all, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, happy to share.
Yeah, perfect. So first of all, let's start with you. Who are you, and how did you get to where you are?
Sure. Yeah, so my current role is I'm the global UX director for Glovo. Glovo is a multi-category delivery company. We compete with DoorDash, Uber, Deliveroo globally. So we're in 25 countries, but as part of the Delivery Hero group, we are in 75 countries, and we compete with Grab in Asia. We compete with pretty much everywhere besides the US. And before that, I worked as a founder, was working at startup companies, mostly in the early stages. So first 10 employees working on UX, the first designs, and then also worked at Booking.com as a consultant at PwC. And then in the States, where I was working my way up the chain.
Nice. So you've been around and you've done a lot of stuff. I don't think that Glovo is in Canada either, right?
No, unfortunately, not yet.
I will look for it one day. Perfect. So you have lots of experience with design and how to get the right design to the user so they can actually use it. And that's where user testing and getting into the picture, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a bit about, before we dive into specific products, we wanted to understand a bit more about, the different tools in this area. How do we do user testing and what do we do with the data that we get and stuff like that? We are product managers, Matt and I, and in our career, we sometimes had to dab into that, but sometimes we had researchers, UX designers and UX researchers that did it for us. So not every product manager is familiar with that, but we still feel that it's important for our community to know about these products and understand them. First of all, to know what is there, what is the capabilities, and then if you don't have a designer or researchers doing it for you, then don't be afraid to use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are the different type or what are the solutions they're providing? What problems are they solving?
Yeah, certainly. So user research tools are a mix of 4 different categories. So as a product manager, people who are more on the business side, you're more familiar with behavioral quantitative data. So product analytics, number of clicks, number of downloads, page views, that kind of thing. But those software and the tools that are used to track that don't go into the why or the logic. So on our side, on the user research and design side, you're mostly trying to figure out why people took actions. So you're thinking more about the attitudinals, like the belief, what they thought, how they felt, what they say, not so much exactly what they do. And so we're looking more at what is called qualitative. So it's kind of the direct kind of source or origin for the action they took. So it's not just the action, but the reason why.
Yeah, we had a conversation with a prior guest around lean analytics and the qualitative and quantitative aspect of it all, having to combine those two. So that's a great point that you just made there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is even before we actually developed the product. So it's very hard to get a lot of data like that from our product because the functionality is not there yet, right?
Exactly. You're trying to guess, you're trying to get humans to do a thing that humans are bad at, which is to predict how they'll act in a scenario they haven't been in yet.
Okay, so there is this qualitative information we're trying to get. What are the problems or other things that this, the ecosystem of products are doing?
Yeah, so companies and products and businesses get feedback in all kinds of ways. User research is kind of like a broad scope. Everything from customers' feedback, customer support, public reviews, down to, internal complaints, feedback from your employees, focus groups, interviews. And so these software really try to facilitate the methods you have. So maybe you want to go do field studies, but that means you need to collect notes from tons of people getting feedback. Or if you want to kind of run a very, very rapid test, or maybe you want to do an A/B test, but you don't want to just see the product analytics. You want to know why did a customer prefer A over B. The software in this space really tries to help facilitate and synthesize all the learnings and insights, and then also has the job of maybe storing and distributing the knowledge.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I think there are some terms in the industry that are known for these type of products. Can we just break it down? What are those terms? Because I know when we discussed before, you were using some terms like attended and non-attended, or maybe that's the terms I used and you used a different term. So what are the right terms to use here?
Yeah, certainly. So trying to bridge the gap, there's a couple of terms that are very familiar. So, similar to synchronous and asynchronous meetings, you can have unmoderated or moderated testing. So if you're physically there real time with the participant, the customer, the user, then this is moderated. So you are actually moderating the session. But if it's unmoderated, you are sending them, a tool or a link to some instructions, and they're being recorded as they fill out or complete a task. Those are the two big buckets.
Right. And I believe there is also, for what you mentioned before, with facilitation and synthesizing the data and making the data available for the research and the product team to look at. What is that called?
Yeah, so there's conducting the tests and then synthesizing the results, but then there is also the second part, which is the storage and analysis. So if you're just going to record the video of the user trying to use your product and then some notes, that's one thing. It's another thing to then have granular, minute details on the lifetime value and the behavior history of a customer or their sessions, plus automatically reading all of the text, maybe doing sentiment analysis. So that would be called more of a repository.
I see. So the repository, right. Okay. So when we look into the specific products, are these the things that we need to look for? Like mainly what type of test they're doing, moderated and or unmoderated, how they conduct the test, how do they store and analyze it, and then the repository?
Yeah, exactly. I would say like going from easy to advanced, in both categories, the tools that enable your team to be the most independent are the most advanced tools. So self-service is the highest level of advancement.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. What about finding the users to test? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate self-service. If you can get your team to use a tool to actually find the right customers or users to talk to, and then also run the test all within the same tool, you have a very complex product.
Do these tools help you source those if you're a small startup company that don't have a user base? Do these tools help gather participants for you?
Yeah, they call them panels, and honestly, this is probably the biggest portion of trying to decide between software in the space. So the companies that have done a really good job building very, very large panels, but also very diverse panels. And when we talk about diverse, it could be industries or segments. It can be the languages spoken by the users in these panels. It can be the countries where they have users. And this is going to be really helpful as a small company trying to expand or maybe even choose a market to launch in, because you're able to actually predict the performance of the company or the product or the feature in different markets and different scenarios and different user groups. So it kind of allows you to do a bit of demographic testing as well as feature testing.
Yeah, I think this is maybe, from my experience, this was always the hardest thing in some products that I was building, because when you build a consumer product, I was always in B2B and B2B2C. So in consumer products, there is the Starbucks test, right? I guess like it works for a lot of products. You just go into a Starbucks and you show it to people because they might be the consumers. But with B2B, you have to find those consumers, and they will not necessarily sit in a Starbucks, right?
Exactly.
So where are those users? And when I was connecting with some of those, searching on some of those, platforms in the past, that was the first thing, like, to look for me anyway, like, can I find my users over there, or do I need to source them and bring them into the system, right? So what is your take on that?
It's always very tricky. Like you said, it's dependent on both the business model type, but also how niche of an audience you're serving. So for B2B2C, which I've worked in for a lot of the time, you're talking about the employees of a type of company. So it's the internal users of the customer, because the customer in your case is going to be someone who's in purchasing or procurement or maybe a director, but the actual end user is going to be someone who's in that department or the team. Maybe it's a salesperson, or maybe it's a designer. So it's not the person who is making the business purchasing decision. It's who they're buying for, and so you end up needing to go to trade conferences or industry events, and it's just not an efficient way to get feedback on products. And sales teams have done this for years, where you have these large executive sales teams. On the research side, you can't do that. You have to really be able to, at scale, reach 1,000 people who work at financial services companies in accounting. And you need tools like these research platforms to have really diverse panels, so you can access people hopefully within 2 to 3 business days.
Exactly. And even with my own clients, when I was trying to reach my own clients, in some places in the past, my account managers kind of like tried to shield them. They didn't want me to reach out to them. So I had to find ways to do that. That's when I started implementing in-app messaging to reach out directly from the application to the users. But you mentioned something interesting there about 1,000 of users, 1,000 users like in a few days. Do you really need 1,000 of users? What's the magic number?
So the magic number generally is 5. They say like it's a design proven, research proven principle, right? The Pareto principle. You can find 85% of problems within a certain audience. You talk to 5 people from that audience. Now that's great, but that's not scientifically proven to be every possible problem you have. It's going to give you the majority of problems, right? So like in product and in design and in this world, we're solving for 80%. But if you're in a very competitive market, or you're trying to go up against an incumbent leader in a certain market, you want to kind of go for that 20%, that niche, those edge cases that really makes you stand out. So you want to then increase the number of people you talk to so that you hear a bit more diverse perspectives.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think that now that we have the background and what to look for, what these type of products are, we can probably start diving into some of these products, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So we have 4 products, like I mentioned before, that you're familiar with, you worked with in the past, and you also mentioned to us that you taught some of them as a professor somewhere.
Yes, exactly.
That's perfect. So that's a very varied experience there. So that's cool. So we have Maze, UserZoom, UsabilityHub, and UserTesting.
Yes.
This is awesome. Very impressive. And I think we said we probably going to split it to a couple of episodes. So let's start with Maze and UserZoom. And because this is the first time we're doing this comparison kind of episode, I mean, in the past, some people, they talk about one product and then they knew other products, so they were able to tell us how it compares. But the other products were not the focus of the episode. So here we kind of need to be a bit creative about how we're going to do that. So we can go either by just talk about one product and then the other one, or you can talk about different areas of the product and then kind of talk about both of them, whichever you feel is better.
Sure. Yeah, let me summarize both and then we can compare them. So from my experience, like the designers and the product managers have always loved Maze the most. It's really good for continuous product discovery. It's very quick to go from a design or a wireframe or a sketch into some rapid user research. So it's mostly used for live testing, so synchronous or moderated. They have templates for asynchronous. They directly integrate with Figma, Envision, Sketch, WXD. They're really designer friendly and focused on usability testing, testing concepts, really trying to see if users understand how to use a product or a feature. They record video, audio, screens. They have a really good panel, and they're one of the independent players, so they've worked really hard to make a very diverse, comprehensive product. Then on the other side, you have UserZoom, and instead of going really deep, they've gone really wide. So they have the ability to support almost all kinds of research, even as far as going into, customer experience and marketing research. They have NPS, they do trust, they do ease of use, they do the screen recordings, they have their own panel. And they also have a really unique metric called the QX score, which is kind of like NPS for products with a more usability focus. So they mix task completion with satisfaction and behavioral data. So they're just really, really diverse, and so that you can run all your research on one platform, like an all-in-one. And this is where they differ, right? One goes super deep, but narrow, and then one goes super wide, but a bit shallow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we saw this in product analytics. Some were highly focused on the product analytics stuff, but then some went broader and did a bunch of other things. So it seems to sound similar.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the themes, like absolutely, like Matt said, we see around. So maybe let's dive a bit deeper in each one of them. So, and then we can go back to the comparison or why one company would want to use one versus the other in more details. So let's start with Maze. Like, what is the best thing that you can do with Maze?
The best thing you can do with Maze is really catered towards designers, and I would say early stage product teams. So they're really, really strong on usability. So if you have a sketch or a wireframe, you just want to know if customers are going to understand it. Do they need instructions? Do they need any support? Is there any friction with adopting a new feature? They're the best, I would say, at this. So designers are super happy to go directly from Figma. They have really deep API integrations into all the leading software, and they have really strong reach. So they have a kind of a CRM built in. So you can really segment who had difficulty understanding a new feature, who had struggles, who didn't. And it kind of helps you understand how much work it would be to launch a feature or to change a feature.
And with them also, you mentioned they have a panel. How good is that panel?
I would say their panel is not as deep. I would say this is kind of the trade-off of focusing a lot on usability. So usability is not super specific to a certain industry or segment of a market, because generally, if you tested with 100 people how usable, a mobile app is, as long as they are from the same, demographics, they're going to have the same amount of exposure. The thing that you want to test that's maybe unique to a panel is maybe there's a certain standard that's been set in a certain industry, like all of the tools that are used by accountants have set a precedent. And if you introduce something that's wildly different, that precedent is broken, they're going to have a learning curve to know how to use it. And so that is when you want to have a panel that's specific to the industry or the target audience that you're focusing on.
I see. Okay. So this could be like one of those decision-making points where If your industry is not in their panel, then you have to source those people and bring them in. Otherwise, bad luck for you.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like the UserZoom, the Maze panel is not as comprehensive as UserZoom. Both these tools allow you to pull in your own customers or users as well as add to theirs. But Maze definitely has a weaker internal panel.
I see. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I think that's a good way to go through this product by, those things we talked about before, the panels, the moderate versus unmoderate, conducting the test, the storage and the repository, right? So for the panels, you're saying that UserZoom has a wider panel with more segmentation and more. Do they have also numbers like about how many people they can source or what is the reach?
Yes, definitely. I think public numbers right now for Maze are around 130,000 people in their internal panel. And everyone really wants to promise not just density and size of the panel, but also reaction time. So Maze publicly commits to 2 hours or less response time, which is great. Whereas UserZoom has a panel company called IntelliZoom. I think they are much, much bigger. I would say probably something like 500,000. But they don't promise a response time specifically. They say most studies can be done in 10 to 20 minutes, which is much faster than 2 hours. But because of probably the diversity or how big the panel is, it really depends on which segment you choose to test in. And so when you do a test, they will change the estimated completion time based on who you've kind of targeted.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So that will be more specific so they will know better.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I actually, that's I wonder how they do that. That's a very interesting thing to think about or to learn. But for us, it doesn't really matter. As the user of those products, right? As long as we get what we need, it doesn't really matter how they do that. But it's an interesting one actually. In the past, when I had to source my own testers, I went through some freelancers that I found online that's what they do. They are connected to a lot of databases and they can source. I tell them I need 100 people of this segmentation, and then they will get to me the 100 people or something like that. It was an interesting thing to see, how they do that. But the results were pretty good. So
yeah, exactly. And like even before, like UserZoom, when they were independent, they had, let's say around 500,000, so 500,000 participants. Now that they've just recently been acquired by UserTesting, you're taking a company that's had many more years to recruit in multiple countries. So, they now have access to an extended network of partnerships with over 100 million participants, possibly.
Oh, wow.
Moshe, didn't your daughter do some user testing?
Yes, she did. She did.
Okay, yeah, I'm recalling a previous conversation on that. Yeah,
she did. She did on user testing and on another one. I don't remember which one it was, and she got some money from that.
Yeah.
But it was always asking her like, if she's interested in a specific thing, or it asked her some questions to see if she's a good fit for a test, right?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. Cool. So let's move on to the moderate versus unmoderated. How do these two compare?
Yeah, so this really has a lot to do with the investment a company makes and their product discovery. So sometimes you have product managers who are totally responsible, and a company doesn't have dedicated research, staff headcount. Other times you hire for more of a unicorn, or this controversial term, a 10x designer, who's both experienced at doing research and design in a bit of the business, because you need someone who can design the software and then conduct their own unbiased research, but then also look out for maybe, areas of improvement, opportunities for growth while talking to customers. So these products that really rely on a person, an expert being in the room conducting the research, are moderated. And you want to have very high quality panels for this, because every hour of a real human who's on your staff is very expensive for you. They can only do one thing at a time. So you want to make sure these products have scheduling, so that there isn't too much time wasted by your designer, researcher, or product manager, scheduling the hour time slot to have a live conversation with the customer or user, You want them to take notes and transcribe because, as a person who's conducting this research, multitasking is not great for quality. And then you also want them to kind of keep a history of who you've talked to and for what reason. So kind of like a CRM, keeping track of who you talked to, when, for how long, and what you learned. And for unmoderated, you are looking for maybe a different set of features or skills because you want to be able to run surveys or show designs or A/B tests. And it isn't so much focused on storage of data or transcribing video, but you're really looking for high quality data like product analytics. So you want to see heat maps of where the user clicked and scrolled. Because you weren't there to watch it yourself, you want the tool to collect all that little metadata.
Is a tool like Maze really good at analytics like that?
Yes, exactly. And this is why Maze has really deep integrations into the design software. So if you're not going to be there and they have a smaller panel, at least you have really high quality and very fast response times where you can see where users scrolled, where they hovered, possibly where they were confused. You can kind of recreate the experience of watching a user live since you weren't there.
Excellent.
Right. And you mentioned, I think earlier, that they integrate with the Figma, but are they integrated with other design systems?
Yeah, they're probably the most integrated. They have Adobe XD, they have Vision, they have Sketch, they have Figma, and I think they're always adding more. As long as there's APIs available, they will do integration.
And from these two products, which one is better on moderated and which one is better on unmoderated?
Yeah, so UserZoom's strength is moderated. So they have a very, very large participant recruitment functionality. So you can really find very niche customers. They also auto schedule. And so it makes it very easy for you to say, I want to talk to 10 customers of a certain type next week, and then link your calendar and it fill in all the available spots in your calendar with 10 customers who match what you're looking for. And then it vets them, screens out people who are not a good fit, and then schedules them.
Nice.
They don't do compensation, like they won't pay for the time. They haven't gotten there yet, but they have a pretty robust suite for moderated.
This is an interesting point because I always debated with my team whether we need to compensate or not. There was always arguments to here and there, to both sides of the coin. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's always like a joke, but like in this economy, but yeah, I think you have to pay people for their time. Yeah. I mean, so UserZoom is recruiting in either 16, they have two plans, either six countries or 14 countries. And so depending on where you are, maybe compensation can look like different amounts, but especially if you're going to be talking to middle-class Western society, I mean, you're taking people who are generally giving you feedback during working hours. So you're taking away from, their income-driven time. Even if you're doing this in other parts of the world, you're trying to get really fast, actionable feedback. So you want really high quality. It's usually better if you're paying them. There's a bit more skin in the game, a bit more interest to give details.
Right. But and when you use these products and their panels, then it's kind of like almost out of the box that these people will be paid, right? But if you do like your own research and you recruit people and then you do it outside of these systems, that's where it's up to you to decide, are you going to pay them or not?
Gift card.
So that's where these questions comes up usually, right? I don't think think there is an option on these systems to say, don't pay these people, right?
There is if you supply your own research panel. So let's say you recruit customers from your app. Like let's say at the end of every purchase, there's like, hey, do you have time for a 3-minute survey? All those emails you've gotten for the last 20 years, they're always unpaid user research. It's post-purchase. It's generally influenced by how successful or friction-free the purchase flow was for a certain company, but that's traditionally unpaid research. In our case, you're not leaving it up to chance. You're not like, hey, if you have some time, 2 minutes, please. You're actually targeting them maybe mid-flow or even before, or even they're not even in the app. Maybe you're specifically trying to recruit 24/7 for constant validation. Before the burden is really on you to convince them. So either you give them a discount on your loyalty program, or you give them a voucher on the service, or you just straight up compensate them with an Amazon gift card or cash.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, that's good to know for sure. Okay, cool. So next is, conducting the test. And, when you have the unattended, moderated and unmoderated, I still have to get used to the terminology. I'm sure that conducting the test is very different, right?
Yes. And this is where some companies and many companies struggle is there is a particular skill when it comes to being a user researcher, even compared to doing, normal market research, which is this bias part. So you need someone who understands your business and, the kind of the goals you're trying to drive towards with the information you're seeking, but you also need to avoid that dictating or biasing the research itself. You don't want to taint or like skew the answers people give. So I'll give you a quick example. Do you love getting paid your paycheck early? Is a biased question, because most people, if not anyone, is going to say yes to that question.
Of course.
Versus if I asked you, how important is it to be able to control when and how you get paid your salary every month? Like that one's more unbiased and a bit more neutral, because you might specify once a month or twice a month. You might specify an amount. You might specify a lot more details, which are a lot more variables. And that's the variables we're looking to hear. We don't want to provide you half the answer of the variables, because it limits the amount of research we're going to get out of you.
Right. Absolutely. To me, it will be when I need to pay my mortgage.
Exactly.
On demand.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. You're right. So there is a skill set for people that they need to know. Do these products help you with this, or do you have to bring that skill set to the table?
So some of these tools have templates, and the templates are backed by scientific research, market researchers, clinical researchers who try to avoid or eliminate bias, or they leave kind of placeholders for you to fill in certain variables without overcompensating or extending too much knowledge to the user. So those templates are super helpful. And then in addition to that, still having a researcher either review or conduct the research helps, especially when it comes to follow-up questions. Because as you can imagine, if you're a salesperson, you're driving towards a sale, and someone even just hints or indicates the possibility for like an upsell, you're going to go for that upsell. And so that bias can creep in even after you have a vetted script.
But I wonder, like in this day and age of AI, does the system, for example, tells you, oh, this question you're asking is biased?
I would love that. I think that's a good space for these companies to go into.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity for AI here.
Yeah, yes. I'm sure. Everyone's thinking about AI these days. Everyone put something in there for AI, especially in the generative text. So maybe to create the question for you, I don't know. But if we still want to have control over these things. So if we are putting the questions in there, like I would like help like that, for example, especially if I don't have the skill, to
just to make them sound better.
Absolutely. Cool. So after we conduct the test, and moderated and unmoderated tests are different, then there is the storage and analysis of the test. So how does each one of them do that for this type of tests?
Yeah, so there's two key ways. You have the raw data. So you have, let's say, the video recording of a user using software, which is screen recording, or if you're doing moderated, you have the recording of both the video cameras of both the person who's the researcher or the note taker, plus the participant or the user, and also the screen recording of the user kind of that's taking the test. And so this is let's say, the raw source. You can then go into the transcription, so all the notes of what was said. You can also then highlight keywords or frustrations, or where a user said they're confused. So looking for keywords that were said. You can also look for moments where there's silence, so which might be an indication of confusion or hesitation or being lost. And then the tools that are the best let you kind of cut certain sections or flag certain sections as like, this is a great point of insight, or this is a great example of a user being confused, or this is a user who really gets it instantly. And so being able to like annotate your own video recordings, audio recordings is a great feature as well.
And specifically for Maze and UserZoom, are they good at one thing, or or another thing?
Yeah, so both of them are pretty, I would say, light on this. I think UserZoom has the best moderation tools. Again, they focus really on having a really large amount of people, and they focus heavily on moderated. So they have a bit deeper, let's say, toolkit on this. So you can actually go in and save segments of a video, and then they're called snips or snippets. You can send them to people. You can then flag in a video like certain like bookmarks of where exactly in the video or in a session there's really valuable insights. You can copy and paste text directly out of it. You can end up sending deep links to any of your colleagues or a boss who needs to hear a certain piece of customer feedback. Whereas Maze is pretty light on this. They have the recordings and they kind of do automated reports. But those reports are more so on, behavioral. So misclicks, any indication of confusion or lack of usability, survey results. It's a bit more on the quantitative side. Since you're not there physically, they're really just trying to summarize insights as much as summarizing the conversation.
Yeah. And I think everything you said, like there is so much things to maybe unpack over there that it feels like that could be just another episode, but we'll leave it at that for now, because we are already there is a lot to talk about this product. So
there are.
Usually our episodes are a bit shorter, but I think this will be a really great addition to the episode, to the podcast, and to our listeners. And then the last thing on the list of things we got earlier was the repository. So do these systems support a repository, or you have to use another product for that?
Generally, in these cases, you need to use a separate product. There's a ton of products on the market. Both of these companies are trying to add a bit of functionality to this, but UserZoom today is the most advanced. They have a product suite called Enjoy HQ, which tries to centralize, user experience and CX data. So they're looking at NPS, they're looking at your research nodes, they're looking at satisfaction. So they're a bit broad, but again, not as deep.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a good point about these repositories, that the user testing is only one entry point for your data that you get from your clients. So that's why usually it's a third party application that will support that, getting the information from all the different tools and all different areas where people actually provide feedback. I even had a discussion last week about what the meaning of the word feedback is, because like user feedback, because in every context, the people are using this word, but in the context of user testing, it's the feedback on the test. In the customer support, it's the feedback about the product. So the word feedback actually is a very loaded word, I think, in this environment. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now, we usually also ask our guests what they don't like about the products. And do you want to share maybe one thing about each one of the products that you don't like?
Yeah, certainly. Like I said earlier, Maze is super designer friendly. I think designers feel very autonomous, independent in the tool. Maze, in my opinion, is not the best for enterprises in terms of the amount of data you're getting as maybe a director or VP, just trying to understand the quality and the speed of your research and your kind of ability to do product discovery. I think they're trying to improve this. You want to be able to see the ROI a bit better. You want to be able to maybe produce some kind of metric you can use in an OKR. And Maze is a bit slower to get to that level of fidelity. In terms of UserZoom historically the last 2 years, 3 years, has been investing a lot in their own UX, their own UI of the software. Very, very user-friendly in the past couple of years, and they've lost customers. We actually left UserZoom for Maze because of the UI and trying to use it and having our team not adopt it very quickly. But they've been investing a lot in this, and so we are back with UserZoom, and hopefully we'll stay.
It's funny that a product that aims at user testing have a bad user design. That's
as this whole episode shows, they're very complex tools, and even just a choice to do one screen differently could lead to some churn.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Huh.
No, this is a very interesting thing because I would guess that they would test their designs with
Yeah.
testers. But maybe my assumption that testing the design doesn't mean that you actually do the right thing of building the right thing. So
Yeah, I mean, the 85% is still leaving over some people left over who are maybe unhappy.
yeah. Or ignoring what you tested, right?
Yeah, you can see different results in the same notes.
Okay, cool. Just want to ask about the companies behind the product. If you have any insights about how they are, their support, are they responsive, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, they both have really great onboarding teams and customer success teams. I would say UserZoom, from what I've seen so far, has had the best. I mean, we had a dedicated principal researcher who they have on staff who kind of helped set us up with in-person and digital trainings. They have a really amazing academy at UserZoom, so like an online education platform where they go through the features and the tools and how to make people who are not good at research, at least novice level. So they've invested a lot more in e-education. So the company behind UserZoom is definitely investing a lot in making it sticky so that people don't leave and that they really understand how to use the tool quickly. And now that they are backed by UserTesting, one of the biggest in the space, I can only imagine that'll get better. Whereas Maze, I think again, Maze is really going for depth. So they're going for expertise. They're going for really the most comprehensive solution for each feature they add. And I think that's going to be where they keep customers. So if a customer needs a specific type of research, if Maze has it, Maze is generally going to be the best offering for that particular type of research. And that's really what they're banking on.
I was going to ask about pricing model and subscription plans and see what kind of comparison there is between the two. It sounds like they're both diverse. They have various features, and there's probably some complexity between the two. But I didn't know if you could speak to how it's set up pricing wise.
Yeah, I would say UserZoom again is more mature as a company, and therefore their enterprise plans are very, very flexible. So we're an international business. We're in 25 countries. They worked with us, like a very deep relationship we have on terms of customizing the plan for enterprise. So in terms of having a really strong SDK and the privacy concerns and SOC 2 security compliance, all that fun stuff, plus localization, because you're trying to get people to talk to each other. So if they don't speak the same language or if there's a language barrier, that can all get in the way of your research. And they have a really good strategy at trying to get around that. Maze is used by really massive companies and like GE, Air France, KLM, Vanguard, McKinsey. And so they've done a really good job at this as well. But they started out targeting smaller businesses. So they have much cheaper entry points. They have $0 a month trial plans that can last months or years. And they even have, the professional plan that's currently billed at $75 a month, which is a very affordable plan for a startup company. Whereas UserZoom and UserTesting, don't even like to disclose their price and are known for starting around $15,000 a year.
A startup company wanting to access these things and wanting to access participants, being able to get in the door, but that's obviously a barrier of entry when it comes to pricing and stuff for certain companies. So excellent, cool.
I'm looking forward to hear about the other two products. And you did mention the products that you chose, but actually, I would love to, after we hear about the other two in the next episode, to hear also why you chose that specific one. And I'm sure that this was, good for your case because of specific things. But like you mentioned, different tools do different things better. And therefore, different organizations might have to choose another product, not specifically the one you chose, right?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. I think we're good for today because we are going to meet you again for another episode of Product for Product podcast. And next time we are going to talk about UsabilityHub and user testing.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Kevin. This was amazing. I really learned a lot today. It also organized in my head a lot of those things about this type of products out of lack of not using them myself, right?
Same here.
Perfect. And this will be really, really helpful for our listeners.
Great. Well, thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Moshe. Thank you to the listeners. And we'll be talking to you soon again, Kevin.
Great. I had fun.
Thank you to all the listeners. We really appreciate the feedback and support. Please leave us a review to help others find the show on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you're listening to the show.